afternoon, Internet. Welcome back to Gargo's Man Cave. Hopefully you enjoyed the new introduction to the videos. I've been playing around trying to make my posts look a little bit more professional. The video took me a couple of days to do because I'm not exactly very computer literate. The audio was done by a friend of mine who he mixed it on his laptop, which I was very grateful for. And basically what the idea is going to be have the intro, and then each video will be about 10 minutes long. My friend Craig, he said don't make them any longer, otherwise people get bored, which is true. You watch too many videos where people are doing nothing but machining up and down, up and down, up and down. So hence I've set myself a 10-minute target per video. Basically, the tender I'm building for Dyak is based on the 4,250 gallon tank designed by Reed for the North British Railway back in the early part of last century. Consists of front and rear buffer beams, 2 side frames, 2 valancers, a couple of stretchers that go across the bottom. There will be obviously the springs, the guide rails, the wheels. But the first part is just going to be about the chassis itself. Now, I started making this before I decided to do videoing, so I've not got a lot of video on the tender frame, the tender chassis. Now, a lot of it will be just simple photographs, but I hope it's interesting and somebody gets something from it. So let's go. And here we see the original design of the tender, which was designed by Curly Lawrence back in the 1930s. Very plain, unadorned. I think it looks a bit boring, so I decided to come up with my own version. And here we see the North British Reed tender. In fact, it's 4,235 gallons, not 4,250 gallons. Designed about 1909. Has a little bit more detail on it. It's got the flare at the top of the tender tank. It's got the coal rails, which give it a bit of character. The steps have got a bit more detail on them, and it looks a little bit more interesting. The springs are curved on this one. I'm going to be making my own springs, and they're not going to be quite as pronounced as that. As I say, the tender I'm making is based on this version, not a identical copy. It's just going to give the impression of a North British Railway tender. The frames were cut from two pieces of 2mm bright mild steel. What I did, I cut them over length and riveted them together, marked them out, and then with a hacksaw and file and drill and lots of swearing and lots of hard work, cut them and filed them to shape. The observant amongst you may notice that the 2 bits that go between just under the arches or the openings look slightly different. That's because I cocked up. I made them too small, so I had to cut them out and silver solder a couple of pieces in. Hopefully once it's all been finished off being cleaned up and filled and painted and primed, you won't notice it. The frames are designed to be bolted together, and hence the 4 bolts at each end. The 2 lower holes in the frames are for the cross stretchers, which are a fabrication. Here are the 2 lower stretchers. Quite simple, bit of mild steel bar, cut to length, silver soldered, and then they were filed round and have been cleaned. And a bit more cleaning up needed, but they don't look too bad. Here we have the front and rear buffer beams. They consist of 2 pieces of 25 by 25 by 3mm angle. If you look, it looks nice and shiny. That's because I clamped the 2 together face to face, milled them off to get them nice and square and get a good finish. Then the brackets were cut from 16 by 16 by 3mm angle, and then riveted, drilled and riveted in place. Once that was done, the frames are clamped to the angles, drilled through and tapped. And here we see the frames assembled. They've been held together with 2mm machine bolts or screws. Next stage will be to actually mark out for the balancers and the brackets that hold them in place, and that's going to be out of a bit of 1.5mm steel for the balancers, and I'll bring you back when I've done that. The next step is to mark out, cut out and adjust the valences. There's obviously one each side, set out slightly from the main frames. The way I did this was mark the, glued up the sheet, marked the shape of the valences, and then drilled a series of holes along the outside of that line. This gives you, saves a lot of hacksawing and filing. Unless of course you've got a fret saw, which would probably make it a lot easier. Once this was done, then I just cut it down into smaller sections from the outside down to the holes, and then put in a 4-inch vise and bent the bits off. Once they'd all been bent off, you can see in this next picture that it's been almost finished. It's then in a vise, file away, file away, file away, get down to the line. Once you've got that done, they should fit quite nicely, as you can see in the final picture of this little bit. Once the balances are made, the next thing to do is make the small spacers that keep them in a right distance out from the main frames. These are made out of some 8x8 mild steel square section, cut into 30mm long strips. Then they'll need holes drilling in for and tapped for 2mm. My nemesis is drilling and tapping 2mm holes. I've invested in some decent drills and decent taps now, and also decided to take a bit more time over it. So the next bit will be to cut and drill the and here we see how the 3 blocks will fit, one on each side. There'll be two holes drilled in each location with a 2mm bolt or screw, whichever you want to call it, coming through from the outside, and a similar setup on the inside. And now it's a matter of setting up to drill the holes. So I've clamped the little vise to my drilling table, marked it all out, set it all up, so it's simply a matter of putting the spacer in, drilling a hole, removing it, turning it around, drilling a hole, and it's rinse and repeat for the rest. Now we see the tender chassis basically complete. We've got the inner frames, the valancers, the two buffer beams, the lower stays, all in place. This is the front, so there'll be a slot carved in that to put the coupling rod to the loco, and this end will have the two buffers fitted. Got to make them, that's the next thing to make, and a coupling hook. Well pleased with how my new taps turned out. I got a couple of spiral ones from the great water website online. I'm sure you'll get the reference. Oh well, now to start working on the buffers. Right, I think well, rather than making the buffers this time, I think I'll call that part of the build complete. Got a chassis that is looking good. I'm very pleased with how far it's come. This is the second, maybe the second and a half version of what I've built. This one's come the furthest. I'm most pleased with it. Next will be probably the a bit of work on the buffers and the bits for the brake gear. In fact, no. What I'll do next one will be the buffers and the front and rear steps. Nice short one. Hopefully get a bit of machining on that. I'm slowly improving my skills with the camera. I'm using my tablet as a camera. And Happy New Year, everybody. Take care. Bye.